It is 2025, which means we are already a quarter of the way through the century. But also today happens to be my 25th birthday. Not the day I record this, but the day this gets uploaded. It is my 25th birthday. And, you know, over the last few years, I have been watching a ton of movies. I think right now, the number of movies I've ranked on IMDb is somewhere around 600, which is huge. But and that's like movies that I've seen, you know, years and years ago, all the way up to movies I've seen today, the day of this recording. And that's a lot of there's a lot of movies, and a lot of people, you know, I talk about movies all the time. You know, over the last year, I've been making a bunch of videos on movies and video games and stuff, and a lot of people ask me, what's your favorite movie? And I'm like, I don't know. You know, there's so many movies I love, but it's hard to pin down a favorite movie. But what I did end up doing was I decided I wanted to make a list of of my top 25 movies of all time. And it's a hard list. It's a hard list. And so I made a list of the top 25 movies, and really the ordering on this list is kind of arbitrary, because it's really hard to kind of put one movie over another. I'm like, this movie, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this movie. This is one of my favorites. And then there's this movie over here, and I'm like, do I put this movie over this movie? And I'm like, I don't know. So this whole list is kind of arbitrary, but I have decided on the number one movie I have decided to call my favorite movie of all time. So the number one spot is what I will now consider to be my favorite movie of all time. And so let's go ahead and start off with the list of my top 25 favorite movies of all time. So number 25 is Descendants. It's a Disney Channel movie, so it's very cheap in production, but it's a movie that I grew up on, at least, you know, as a teen, because the first one came out, mind-blowing, 10 years ago now. 2015, it came out in there, and out of all the Disney movies that have, like, the Disney Channel movies that, like, musicals and whatever, Descendants is the one that I like the most. I don't know. It's fun. Rewatching it, I look at it and I'm like, yeah, this is kind of crappy. This movie isn't very good, but it's still a movie that I just enjoy, and that's why it's kind of more towards the bottom. Number 24 is The Most Wonderful Time of the Year. This is a Christmas movie. This is what I consider to be my favorite Christmas movie of all time, and it is a Hallmark movie, but it also does star the actor who plays Fonzie from Happy Days. And the actor is so charismatic. I love him. And I just think, you know, watching the movie, I just look at it and I'm like, this is just it's just such a fun movie. I like the story. It's not the typical Hallmark movie story. So it doesn't really do the typical, it still has some of the typical, you know, it's still kind of a Hallmark-ish movie, but it is still one movie that I keep watching every year, and it's a movie that I can I still am able to rewatch it, and I've been trying to kind of step away from it because I don't want to get sick of the movie, but it's a movie that it's one that, even though I've been watching it every year, is still one that I really enjoy. Number 23 is The Princess Bride, and The Princess Bride is one especially that was really big for me in high school. We had a Reader's Theater class, and we did every year that I did the Reader's Theater class. We did The Princess Bride. That was the thing that we did, and that's always been a lot of fun. The Princess Bride is just a fantastic movie overall, and just kind of a classic. It's just really fun. Number 22 is Groundhog Day. This is one of the ones I started off that I watched as an adult. A lot of these movies I've watched for the first time as an adult, usually in my 20s. And Groundhog Day, I love the simplicity of it. I think we might have done this movie in our Reader's Theater class too. But this movie, it's just what it does with it, with the story, with the time loop, is just fantastic. I like the character arc that the main character has, Phil Connors, that he goes on. I like what they do with it. The whole thing is really just, it's a tight script. It is fantastic. I don't know. So some of these movies, it's just like they're just perfect movies, and especially with Bill Murray playing the main character, of course, can't beat it. Number 21, Ready Player One. This is a movie that I mean, obviously, I love this movie really because of the VR aspect of it. The whole thing takes place in the Oasis for the most part. It takes place for the most part in the Oasis. But like as the years kind of progress and like VR technology is starting to get more and more closer to Ready Player One, it's just more fun to kind of come back and revisit the movie as the years kind of go on. Number 20 is Interstate 60. And this is a movie that I saw a few years ago, and I had never heard of it before. And one thing I like to say is it's the best movie you never heard of. Technically not true, because I've seen a lot more movies now that aren't typically well known. Because a lot of some of these movies are like movies that you hear a lot about, that are pretty much advertised everywhere and everything like that. But Interstate 60, it's more of like it's a lower budget movie. It's more like a mid-budget to low budget movie, and it's a road trip. And something that you're probably going to see on a lot of these movies is it takes a typical, like it takes real life and then tweaks it in a slight different way. Like Groundhog Day is an example where it's like, okay, everything's normal, but someone's stuck in a time loop. Everything else is normal, but the one guy is stuck in a time loop. Or with Interstate 60, Interstate 60 is a interstate that doesn't exist. And so there's these little magical things that happen on this road trip. And I love like every stop they go on in the road trip, something really unique happens. And I just think like the bits of comedy are just absolutely perfect in this movie. I love how things tie in together and everything like that. This movie, absolutely love it. There's a lot of really great comedy in it, but it's just it's a fantasy road trip in a sense, but it's just unique enough. It's just like, it's not like super crazy fantasy. It's just fantasy just enough. Things are just a little bit odd. Each place that that the main character stops off on, it's got its own little quirk, and it just all kind of works together. Number 19, The Social Network. I think I watched this one probably early 2021 is the first time I saw The Social Network. I absolutely loved this movie. I can't really say why. I don't know if I could really say why. It's just the story and everything is just really well done. Jesse Eisenberg, I really enjoy watching Jesse Eisenberg do his stuff. He's on another movie on this list a little bit higher up. But I really like what he does. I really like the whole story in it being told, kind of like it's a courtroom setting, and then they have flashbacks to like how things were being set up and everything like that. Andrew Garfield in this is amazing, and also kind of learn a little bit of the history of how Facebook was started. Number 18, Planet of the Apes, and I'm talking about the original 1968 Planet of the Apes here. Now, I have a video where I went over all of the Planet of the Apes movies, and actually, Planet of the Apes is not at the top of that list. When I ranked all the Planet of the Apes movies, I don't really think that Planet of the Apes is the best Planet of the Apes movie, but it is on this list and not any of the others for a couple reasons. Firstly, I also have a video on Planet of the Apes, just the movie, and this movie blew my mind, right? I had a conversation with my dad when I had watched Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and I was going to start watching all the Planet of the Apes movies, and I was talking to my dad, and my dad had seen Planet of the Apes, and he wanted to rewatch it because I was trying to get him to when he was going to come visit me. I was trying to I was trying to have him come watch Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes with me, but he wanted to watch that other one first. And I was like, nah, you could skip it. And I was like, the 1968 one is probably going to be garbage. Like old, like 60s sci-fi for the most part is pretty trash. Like that is like, my dad is really into the Star Trek from this, like the original Star Trek series. And I hated it because of how fake everything looked. I never really liked it because it looked like they were on a soundstage. Everything looked incredibly fake. I hated it. So I watched Planet of the Apes. I was expecting it to be low budget. I heard like the masks and everything like that were like ahead of its time and everything. But I was like, I just expected Planet of the Apes just to be, bleh. You know, it's a 1968 sci-fi movie. It's gonna be trash, right? Wrong. I was like, whoa. Because like this movie, like, okay, yeah, sure. It's dated in the sense that like you can tell like it's an older movie. Kind of the way it's shot, the way that some of the dialogue is, you know, you can tell it's a 1968 movie. But the thing is, this movie, like it captures the sense of Taylor, because he's there. Like a big part of it, the movie is that Taylor is a human from like our time, and he is in this world where you have apes are humans are animals and apes are like humans, right? Its roles are reversed, and then you have Taylor. And then like they strip everything from him, so he has literally no proof that he's from another planet, and then he's trying to like he feels like he's going insane because he's being treated like an animal, and like it is just this it's like this movie of insanity, and like you'll feel it, and it's like, oh my gosh, because like it is kind of infuriating how these apes are just like, you know, the way they talk about humans, and it's like mind-boggling. And I was like, the fact that all of that is still there in the movie, like, I don't know, what are we, over 57 years later? You know, like I was like, this is insane. And I still think the original Planet of the Apes is still very much worth a watch in 2025 as it was in 1968. That was just insane. I have my top 100 movies list, and I'm like, Planet of the Apes should have been on that list. There's several movies I probably would have taken off of that list, and I could have replaced Planet of the Apes on there. It should have been on the list. It should have been, especially of how influential it is, and especially considering Mad Max was on there, which I thought was not a really great movie, but I understand why it's there. But anyways, moving on to number 17, we have Avengers: Infinity War. Now, Avengers: Infinity War is kind of the Marvel representation of superhero movies on this list. So it's the only Marvel movie on the list, because some of these I took just one movie from, so like just one movie from a series or from a genre, or like from a director, although kind of stretch that a little bit, but instead of like cluttering it up with like a bunch of different movies that are all in like the same genre or whatever, I put one representative on there, and that just kind of, and it's my favorite out of all of these. So like Planet of the Apes, that might not have been the best. I might not consider it to be the best Planet of the Apes, but it is the representative of the Planet of the Apes franchise. So no other Planet of the Apes movies on here, and yeah, I consider that as my favorite. So Avengers: Infinity War is my favorite Marvel movie of all time, and I love this movie just because of the way it is incredibly fluent in its pacing. It feels like an action, like it feels like the action. It feels like the whole movie is a third act. Like the whole movie is a third act, right? Because it really is, right? you have this is the end of Phase 3. This is one of the last few movies of the end of Phase 3. It's the culmination of 10 years of storytelling. It starts Act 3 from the beginning. Like, it feels like the entire movie is in Act 3, which with like Dune Part 2 was like epic. You know, like you had all the setup and everything like that. So it feels like this is the Act 3 of the MCU, and just it feels like you get onto, like you start off in a banger scene, and then it just doesn't stop. Even though it's not action from start to finish, it's not. But it feels like it just doesn't stop. And I think there was at one point in time where I just wanted to watch like a scene or two from Avengers Infinity War, and like I was like, oh, this scene, and then like, oh yeah, I love this scene, and then like the next scene, it's like, oh, I love this scene, and then it just kept going, and it was like, wow, I love every scene from this movie. Dang, that's insane, you know? Like all the action scenes are just fantastic. So this movie is just incredibly memorable. And then at the end, I remember coming out of the theater from Avengers Infinity War, and I was just smiling. I was just grinning from ear to ear because I was like, yes, I can't, because from the ending, because, you know, I'm like, maybe I'm a little bit of a psychopath over here because half the universe just had, granted, I was like, they're going to be brought back in Part 2. Like, that's what they're going to do. I just didn't expect that they would commit and do the snap, and I was so happy that they did that. I was like, yes, because, you know, a lot of times they'll threaten the end of the world, but you'd never see it. But here, they're like, we're going to have Thanos get all 6 Infinity Stones and succeed in his mission, and I was thrilled with it. Loved it, because I was like, yes, finally we have a movie that kind of breaks the mold and has the villain winning, and we get to see the consequences of what happens when the villain wins. Number 16, The Lego Movie. I think this is one of the first movies that I actually was hyped to go see well before it came out. I was huge into Legos back when I was a kid, and I remember specifically seeing, I'd be on the Lego website, because I spent a lot of time on the Lego website, Lego.com website, and I remember seeing the Lego Movie. I actually thought that it was an unofficial thing, even though it was on the official Lego website, and I was kind of skeptical of it. But I remember back in 2014 when that thing was, they were advertising for it. I remember going to see it in the theater, and even to this day, you know, I watched the movie, and I'm like, this movie is just perfect. It is a very concise story. The whole thing is very tight. It is nice, and short movies, or I'm not like, oh, I prefer a short movie over a long movie, or a long movie over a short movie. I actually like both, because I can really appreciate a slow burn, but then also sometimes I'm just like, you know what? I just love how tight everything is. And with the Lego Movie, I just think everything, like just the way it flowed, the pacing of it all, loved how tight it was, and just how well it works. And it's a very simplistic story, but also still very effective. So, love the Lego Movie. The Lego Batman movie is also really fun. I remember I think I went and saw that one on my birthday back in 2017. That also has some significance for me, but I'm not going to go into that. But and it's also not on this list. But number 15 is Memento, and I saw this one because of the top 100 movies list. Memento, this is I think one of Christopher Nolan's first earliest movies, and this one utterly insane. This one is it's told backwards, and you start off at the end of the movie, and every scene is is what happened before the last scene. So each scene is told it's told in reversed order, and then intercut between those scenes you have this what is in order in black and white, and you have the main character on the phone, and then at the end of the movie those two kind of fit together right into it. And the movie is about a guy who lost his short-term memory, and so the reason why they tell it in reverse order is so that because he loses his because he kind of forgets where he's at. Each scene, you start off with like it's like a reverse cliffhanger, I guess. What just happened? How did I get here? And then he's trying to figure out what's going on. And then the next scene, you take a step back and you're like, oh, that, and then you're like, oh, what just happened? What's going on? You figure out what's going on, and by the end of it, you're like, oh, and that's how we got into this other situation. And so it just keeps doing that. And so I love Christopher Nolan movies because of the way he plays with time and everything. And so this movie, I thought it was just really, I just love this movie just because of the way it tells its story, and it effectively gets you it puts you in the shoes of a guy who has short-term memory loss. That is just really unique. Number 14 is Django Unchained. Now, Django Unchained is my representative for the Quentin Tarantino movies. I think I haven't seen them all quite yet, but it is what I would consider to be my favorite of the Quentin Tarantino movies. And I love this one. I think I was kind of starting to be like, hey, am I really into Westerns? Granted, I also watched this after playing Red Dead Redemption 2, so some things from this movie just made me really think of, hey, that reminds me of Red Dead 2. I love that. But I love this movie. I like what they did with it. One thing I love about Quentin Tarantino is the fact that he kind of shows he kind of shows things as kind of more like what they would be, right? In Tarantino's Western movies that take place in the 1800s, it's like, yeah, like you can criticize Tarantino for using the N-word an unnatural amount of times in a movie, but also that's just the way these people would have talked. These people, they would have used the N-word in a derogatory manner constantly. So it seems like on the surface it's like whoa, you know, you're using a lot of this, but then on the other hand, it feels unfiltered. You know, Tarantino likes to. He's got a lot of gore in his movies. He's got a lot of swearing. He's got and in some of these westerns, he uses a lot of the N-word. And on the surface, it kind of feels like, oh, this is like really graphic, and it's like, okay, yeah. But on top of that, it also, like on a deeper level, it also feels more authentic. It feels more realistic. It feels more like, hey, this is the unfiltered version of a movie from this time, you know, because you have a lot of movies that wouldn't have used a lot of that stuff, and it's like, actually, they would have, you know. Things weren't nice back in those times. The world isn't nice, and so seeing that, it just feels a little bit more unfiltered, and so it's like, oh yeah, it feels a little bit more authentic, I guess. Number 13 is Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Now, this is my representative for the DC movies, so you're not going to see The Dark Knight on this list. But the reason I chose Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, even though what I consider the best DC movie, probably not. But the reason I have this on my list is because when I saw this movie, like this is a movie that I actually watched quite a few times within the same year. And every time I watched it, I got something new out of it. And that's something that's really rare. Like that's not something that I really see all that often. But it is something that I absolutely love. That whenever that a movie is complex enough that when you rewatch it, you pull a little something extra out of it. You're like, oh, I didn't realize that before. I didn't notice this before. Also, this movie is the first movie that I bought the soundtrack for. I got I think I bought digitally the Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice soundtrack because I really liked it. And also on top of that, that's also where I started like learning some names like Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL from this movie. And so whenever I see Hans Zimmer, you know, I'm like, oh man, yeah, I love Hans Zimmer's music, right? So it kind of started making me pay attention a little bit more to the composers behind movies, as well as really just kind of like watching the movie and then seeing like being able to pick out new things every single time I watch it. And that is just something that's really unique. So this movie really has something special to me. Also, I am still a defender of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, this movie doesn't make sense," or people complain about the Martha. And I still, nobody can ever get me to trash this movie, because to me everything makes sense, and I feel like a lot when people look at the Martha scene and they just kind of ridicule it for what on the surface seems like a bit silly, but you can go a little bit level deeper and actually understand what exactly is going on. So I kind of understand why people think this is really silly, but on the other hand, a lot of it is people who just don't understand what's actually going on, and they're memeing on it and they're trashing it because, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to them. But this is a movie that is one of my more controversial takes, that it's one of my favorite movies, and it is one that I'm still willing to hold on and to defend, even though people are just bent on trashing it. Also, I think this is my Zack Snyder representative as well. I really like Zack Snyder's movies. I have not watched I haven't really watched any of his movies that have been released over the last 5 years, except for Zack Snyder's Justice League. But I guess it's really Zack Snyder's DC movies, plus 300. I'm trying to think if there's any other movies that I've seen from him, but I really like his style and what he does with this movie. Zack Snyder's Justice League would probably be a contender for this list if Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice already didn't have enough significance to me personally to be on this list. Number 12 is Inception. And Inception is another movie. I actually paired this one in my mind with The Social Network because I watched these two around the same time. And it's both of these movies just really connected with me. And this is kind of, I think, where Inception was I think one of the probably the first Christopher Nolan movie I've seen. Although, I guess technically, The Dark Knight Rises was probably the first. But I didn't really remember that movie. And when I first saw it, I didn't really like it because I hadn't seen a good Batman movie before. So I didn't really like what they did with it. So that's kind of all beside the point. Anyways, Inception was kind of really the first Christopher Nolan movie I've seen. And it was a mind bender. It's a movie that when I first watched it, I was trying to wrap my head around it, and then the second time everything made perfect sense, and it was everything just really clicked together the second time I watched it. But the first time it was just trying to track everything was just really insane. So I really love this movie just because, I mean, listen, if you've seen Inception, you know it is an insanely good movie. I also remember in Boy Scouts, we were doing a cinematography merit badge, and I remember we watched a clip of the behind the scenes of the rotating hallway for Inception, and I didn't really know what the movie was at the time, but I remembered that. And then later when I had seen Inception, I was like, is that the same movie? And then I ended up looking up and I was like, yes, it is. So yeah, a little something interesting. Also, Inception is another one of those movies where it takes a little sci-fi element, it takes real world stuff, and it takes a little sci-fi element, and then it plays with that concept, right? And same with the number 11, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. This is a movie, I think I first saw it for the first time. Was it last year, 2023? I don't remember. I don't remember when I saw most of these movies. Anyways, this movie is a movie that I watched. It's basically a guy's getting his memory of his ex-girlfriend erased, and the whole plot takes within his mind. It's a Jim Carrey movie, and it's not a comedy. It's a romance movie, and it's weird because it sounds kind of okay, that's a bit weird, but it actually kind of starts from the beginning of his relationship. Of the character's relationship, and then it kind of goes all the way to the beginning as it's all being erased, and it kind of plays with the concept of, hey, if you could erase if you could erase the memory of someone would you do it? Right? If there's someone you're like, oh man, I really wish I could erase my memory of this person, would that actually be a good idea? And so you stay in the mind of Joel, the character played by Jim Carrey, and that's where you stay for like most of the movie. And like it's really, I don't know, it's a great romance story, and also just kind of a great thing of like, even though you think you would want to erase your memory of someone, you actually probably don't, because he ends up clinging onto those memories even as they're getting erased. And also, interestingly enough, actually, I'm not going to say anything more about it, because if you haven't seen it, then it's definitely worth a watch, and I don't want to put any spoilers here. So at number 10, we have Mad Max Fury Road. And this one is, wow. I've watched all of the Mad Max movies leading up to Furiosa releasing last year. And, I also mentioned Mad Max is on my list of my top 100 movies of all time. And the original Mad Max is meh. I have a video about it, but where I discuss with a friend the original Mad Max movie, and that movie was just, it didn't have any of the Mad Maxisms in it. And the second and third one, those are the ones that everybody remembers. Those are the ones that have all of the crazy Mad Max stuff in it. And then you have Mad Max Fury Road, which came out, prepare to feel old again, 10 years ago, 2015. And it's like the whole movie is road action, basically. It starts, with the rig, pulling out, like just shortly after the movie starts, the rig pulls out, and the movie is just a go. It is kind of like one long action sequence. The movie is expertly edited and shot. I think I saw a video where someone, I think I even mentioned this in the video I made about Mad Max Fury Road, where someone made a video showing the amount of cuts between Mad Max Fury Road and a Transformers movie, showing that Mad Max Fury Road has action that is much smoother than the Transformers movies, but is cut faster than a Transformers movie. And if you know Transformers movies, those things are chaotic and you cannot keep track of anything. But the reason why is Mad Max is cut faster and more fluid is because everything is center frame, or at least it draws your eye, like each cut will have your focus be in the same place. So if they draw your eye from here to here, the next when it cuts, the next point is gonna be here that you want to be focusing on. So it just kind of leads you around wherever it wants you to look. It leads you around, and as things get cut back and forth, it doesn't have you. It doesn't like point your eyes over here, and then the next shot it wants you to be looking over here, because if it's being cut really fast, you're gonna look over here, and then it gets cut over here, and then you look over here like really fast. But by the time your eyes get over here, your focus is already down here, right? Like it's being moved all over the place in Transformers movies, but in Mad Max Fury Road, like it just like things just get like it'll have you focus over here, and then the next shot it starts here, maybe focus, maybe moves the focus around over there, or just like keeps it in the center, whatever. It's fluid with all of its focus. It's just masterfully shot and edited with intention. And also, like, I love the post-apocalypse movies and everything. So having the craziness of Mad Max. And also, I played the Mad Max video game. And there's some bits of the Mad Max video game that I'm like, is this an explanation for what happens in Fury Road? Because it came out the same year. And then Furiosa pulls in some stuff from the Mad Max video game as well. So a lot of that stuff connects together, and it's really exciting, and I love it. Number 9 is How to Train Your Dragon. And this movie is what I would consider to be my favorite animated movie of all time. And I actually did watch it, surprisingly in my mind at least, the year it came out. I watched it because of a friend who was visiting us for a while back, all the way back in 2010. And I think that's when I was first exposed to it. I might not have actually watched the movie until a little bit later on. maybe I don't know when exactly, but really I loved this series when they were coming out with back in the mid to late 2010s, I think. They were coming out with on Netflix. They had a TV show. You have the Riders of Berk, you have the Defenders of Berk, and then you have Race to the Edge. So a few different TV shows, but they all kind of and they all kind of, I think, happened between the first two movies. I think is when it all takes place. And I even revisited. I got it on DVD, and I've been kind of revisiting some of it, and I'm like, it is kind of cheap, a little bit cheesy. I haven't really watched the Race to the Edge. I think that's when they start to serialize it, I think is really when it gets really good. But one thing I loved about the TV show is that they have they show off a ton of new different dragons that you don't get to see in the movies, because the movies you can only do so much. But the original How to Train Your Dragon, absolute classic. They're making a live action remake this year. I'm not happy about it. I'm probably going to go see it just to kind of be like, is this any good? I want to see for myself, but I don't have high hopes for it. I also don't see any reason why they should remake this movie 15 years after the original's release. It doesn't quite make sense because, hey, I'm a kid who grew up with the How to Train Your Dragon series. And maybe you might want to wait another 10 years or so before you start remaking those if you want the nostalgia factor for parents bringing their kids. Because, yeah, it's going to be a while before my age demographic gets to that point. So, number 8, I have Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. This movie is one that I would put on as in a 10 out of 10. A lot of these I would put as a 10 out of 10. It's one of the first ones I put it as a 10 out of 10, not because I think the movie quality, or not because I think it's a cinema masterpiece, kind of actually, but also just the movie itself is just perfect. And again, this is the Pirates of the Caribbean representative here. Although I'm not sure any of the other Pirates of the Caribbean movies would make the list. Although I do really like the second and third one. Anyways, the Curse of the Black Pearl, I just think, again, it's another one that's just paced perfectly. Some things just flow so well. And it's just, there's just so much of the movie that just keeps working and working really, really well. Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow is just a perfect example of there's just this genius behind the character, just because of and how they characterize the character as well, without using words or whatever, by demonstrating to you who this character is. I love everything about this movie. It's just kind of one of those movies where I just I don't know what to say about it. Everything about it is perfect, Number 7 is Lord of the Rings. Now here's the thing. Yeah, I'm putting the entire trilogy in this spot because each of the movies is as good as the others. I cannot, trying to rank the Lord of the Rings movies is almost impossible. I have, my favorite is The Two Towers, but and this is the reason I have representatives, right? Because 3 spots could be easily taken up by Lord of the Rings. They all deserve to be on this list. They all deserve to be on the list. It's the perfect trilogy. It is the perfect trilogy. I went and saw Lord of the Rings: War of the Rohirrim back in December. And my only thought was, while watching the movie, is, man, I should watch Lord of the Rings again. Even though I'd watched it, I don't watch movies super often, once every few years at least. But sometimes it'll go many years before rewatching movies. But I'd rewatched The Lord of the Rings. Actually, watched the extended editions for the first time back in about a year ago now. I guess February, somewhere between January to March, I think is when I watched them. And the movie is just. Again, there's just everything about these movies is just perfect. The acting, the cinematography, the world building, the vibes, everything about this trilogy. That's also why I copped out and put the entire trilogy in there instead of one of the movies as a representative, because the entire trilogy deserves to be on this list. It hits all the right points. The music is impeccable. Like, just listening to the music, I'm like, yeah, I want to watch Lord of the Rings again. It's one of those, but I also don't. I'm also not one of those people who watches Lord of the Rings every single year, mainly because I'm not the kind of person who watches things every single year. Yeah, I just don't. I watch it every so often, every few years, because if I watch things every single year, I get sick of them. So definitely not do that. Number 6 is Office Space. And I recently watched this one, I want to say back in June or something around there. May or June, I think, is when I first watched this. This is just an insanely good comedy movie about an office. And I actually work in an office, so there's a lot of stuff that I can relate to. But fortunately, I don't relate to a lot of the really crappy stuff about this. I just think the main character's journey in this movie was just incredible. Like I just think the guy, like, just the whole thing is just so insanely funny. I think, he gets hypnotized to relax, and then the therapist dies, and then he's just stuck like that, and then like he's just like blowing everything off and just like, oh, and then he gets promoted for it and whatever, and it's an insanely funny comedy. Absolutely love this movie. And like after watching it, I was texting my dad. I was like, Dad, you gotta watch Office Space. And I was texting my best friend. I was like, hey, you gotta watch Office Space. I actually went down and visited him and some other friends, and I brought Office Space with me so that he could watch it. Absolutely love this movie. Number 5 is John Wick. This is another movie that is a representative of the entire series. Is John Wick the best John Wick movie? I don't know, probably not, but also I put this one on the list as the first John Wick because there's a lot of these movies, some of them are there's something about the first in a series that it's designed to be a kind of this one-off thing, but it could be built out into other stuff. It's small, it's compact, it's tight. Love the action. Oh yeah, I also have John Wick poster up here, and I absolutely love like everything with the John Wick universe. I love the lore and the world building around John Wick, and they started that in the first movie. I think 4 might be my favorite. It's the only one I got to see in the theaters. No, I did see the original John Wick in a rerun last year, I think. I did, yes. So I've seen 2 of the John Wick movies in the theater, but yeah, I think it is a movie that is just like super well, like it is just super well executed and super fluid. The action is amazing, and I think actually I watched Jason Bourne or the Bourne Identity after John Wick. And I was like, yeah, like the action's kind of crappy in this. And my best friend's like, who loves the Bourne Identity is like, oh, that's because you watched John Wick first. But I ended up watching the John Wick movies, and I was like, I think I got the first John Wick movie, and I watched it, and I was like, wow, I really love this movie. And then I got the other 2, and I was like, I love these movies. John Wick Chapter 4 was coming out, and I was like, dang, I gotta go see this movie. And my friends, they all were wanting to, like, they all had a John Wick marathon. They were all into the John Wick movies, and I was like, hey guys, let's all go see John Wick. Let's all have a John Wick marathon and then go see Chapter 4 when it comes out. And so we did that. We were all gonna go dress up in suits, but due to a communication error, one of the guys was left out, unfortunately. So we didn't go see it in suits, which is what we were intending to do. But that would have been fun, but alas, it didn't happen. But yeah, John Wick is on my top 5 of all time. The next 3 are actually what I would consider to be my favorite movie of the year it came out. So number 4 is Asteroid City, and that's what I would consider to be my favorite movie of 2023. Now that year I saw a bunch of different movies, and so I think starting at towards the end of 2022, I started like branching out and watching movies that weren't like attached to other stuff. And Asteroid City, I was like, I had heard about it, and I was like, I heard it was good, and then a friend of mine was like, hey, we should go watch a movie, and I was like, I heard Asteroid City's good, and we were like, okay, so we went and saw it, and this movie just kind of like it was something that like was hard to process because like even months later, I was still thinking about Asteroid City, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. I love the pastel color palettes of this movie, and this is the first Wes Anderson movie I saw, and so after watching this, I was like, I think I love Wes Anderson movies because the dry humor. I was like, this movie is incredibly funny. Like, this is insanely funny. But like none of it, like it didn't have any of the joking atmosphere. It was really funny, but like everybody was delivering their lines incredibly flat. Like, but you also it was a star-studded cast. Like there's probably like a dozen different people I recognized on the cast list, and big names. You know they can act. So like when they're delivering their lines incredibly flat, like you know that it's on purpose, right? But this movie it is just something that really stuck in my mind a lot, and so I just kind of it just ended up being like I looking at all the movies. I'm like, I feel like Asteroid City from 2023. I think Asteroid City was my favorite. Not the biggest blockbuster, yes, even over Oppenheimer, but I think sometimes the little the smaller movie that people don't get a lot of attention to. Sometimes a lot of those times, those kind of stick out a little bit more to me than a lot of the blockbusters, even though I do love a lot of the blockbusters as well. Number 3, top 3 movies of all time for me, The Menu. The Menu is what I would consider to be my favorite movie of 2022. It's a movie that's technically it's a horror movie. Didn't really consider it to be a horror movie. It's another one of those movies where I look at it and I was just like, yeah, this is like anytime I see something about The Menu, I want to click on like any person talking about The Menu. I want to click on the video. I think the whole message of the movie, it's more of like an eat the rich kind of thing, which is like whatever. But also it's like there's a couple of actors in the movie that I hadn't seen before, and after that, I was like, every time I see them in a movie, I'm like, oh, that guy, or actually like even like Anna Taylor-Joy, right? She's the main character of The Menu, and or at least your protagonist of The Menu, and like I saw like she was in Furiosa, and I was like, sold. I want to go see Furiosa because she's in it, because I thought she was amazing in The Menu. So it's stuff like that. Again, a really like small, low budget movie, small, like really just tight and really well executed. And a lot of these kinds of movies that are just really small scale, small budget, really are effective. And that leads me into number 2, my favorite movie of 2024, The Substance. Also what I would consider to be my favorite movie, or my favorite horror movie of all time. This movie it's like it just sticks in your brain. It is like the images from it are quite artistic. I love the sound design of the movie. Whenever you had the younger version of the woman, you had it sounded like the music was like club music. Like it just had that it was deep, bassy, and just like repetitive. So it sounded a lot like something that you'd hear at a club. To kind of emphasize like the party lifestyle. It was kind of very over the top and very stylish. The sound design really made, when you had Dennis Quaid, I think it was something that you hear a lot of people talk about. You make Dennis Quaid eating shrimp sound repulsive, disgusting, absolutely disgusting. You make him eating shrimp absolutely disgusting. And it's just there to kind of, it's just kind of like an artistic rendition of like a, because the whole thing is really about like women and beauty standards, right? And like, because like your main character, she turns 50, and then she's basically out of the industry. They're like, we don't want older women, so because they're not as beautiful, so we want the young hot stuff, and so it takes that and then just kind of plays it up. It takes it to a heightened level. Makes it a little bit. It makes it more entertaining as well, because it's taking something and it's like, okay, we're gonna exaggerate this a bit, and then you take the style, or very artistic style. Some stuff it's like, hey, this is kind of unrealistic, doesn't make a lot of sense. But on the other hand, it's like, well, it doesn't really need to. It's not about like that, because the whole thing kind of takes place in this like alternate reality kind of thing, alternate Hollywood, and also it has a the element of a little bit of sci-fi, this one little sci-fi element, and then plays around with the concept of that. And The Substance was just a movie that, like, again, I see a video on someone talking about The Substance, I just want to click on it because it just sticks in your mind and everything. Favorite movie of 2024. But now we have gotten to number one movie of all time. My number one movie of all time. What is my number one movie of all time? Well, my number one movie of all time is Blade Runner 2049. And this one, I don't think I would have expected this to be at the top of my list. I have, over the last couple of years, I think a little under 2 years ago, I played Cyberpunk 2077 for the first time. I watched the original Blade Runner a few years, I think back in like 2021 or something like that. Granted, because I didn't really like the movie. I thought it was just kind of boring and whatever. But I also was watching it while playing Minecraft, so that was a big factor to it. But Blade Runner 2049 is a movie where, like, I feel like it's a movie that you just sit there and like marinate in the vibes of the movie. That's kind of the way I like to see it. You're just kind of marinating in the emotions and the vibes of the movie, because it has all of the really colorful cyberpunk aesthetic, the neon lights and the rain, all of that. And then you have then the music is very drawn out tones. So it almost kind of feels either haunting or serene or both, at times. And like you have this action sequence where the music isn't like this really hyper energetic, but instead it's just really long drawn out tones, or notes, I guess, long drawn out notes. And it's very interesting because it's a very interesting movie that is just something that still kind of really sticks in my mind. And I just love the cyberpunk aesthetics that comes with Blade Runner, that comes with Cyberpunk 2077. So with that, like, that's just, it really kind of sticks out to me. The images, again, really stick out, and it's a very, what I would like to call a vibey movie. It's a movie that you want to pay 100% attention to, and you just kind of sit there and you just kind of marinate in it. And Denis Villeneuve is he's the director of this movie, and he made Dune and Dune Part 2. And unfortunately, Blade Runner 2049 was not much appreciated at the time it came out. But I think a lot of his movies didn't really get much attention. Even Mad Max Fury Road, I think, flopped at the box office when it came out. Some amazing movies have. Just later on they come out and people start actually looking at them and like, oh wow, this is really good. But Blade Runner 2049 is my favorite movie of all time. And I have now ranted about my favorite movies for almost an hour in the runtime. If you stuck around this long, hey, thanks for watching. I don't know why you'd want to know what my top 25 favorite movies are, but hey, if you did, congratulations, now you know. These can really get shuffled around anywhere, but I think these are the ones that really kind of stood out to me the most. There's still a lot of movies that I absolutely love. I even, I'm thinking about like The Matrix here. I'm like, oh, The Matrix is one that probably should have been on the list. But it's not, because I only have 25 spots. So try to shuffle things up a bit. But yeah, that's a lot of, and if you're interested in knowing, I don't know, maybe top 10 favorite video games of all time, I don't know if I can do top 25. I don't know if I have enough video games to put together a top 25, or at least enough video games that I don't know, maybe I would. The list would be a lot less exclusive to do top 25 video games of all time. But if you guys want me to do like a top video games of all time, let me know. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Ciao.